Hi YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and this is DM Tips. Today we're going to talk about handling experience points. Now this is always a bone of contention for every new DM. Even experienced DMs often find themselves, they run amok with this. It's a real problem area for a lot of people out there. And these are going to be my general thoughts and tips on the subject. Now I'm doing a campaign builder program, and if you haven't checked that out then I would suggest you do so. Now either in the next campaign builder or the one after, I will be specifically looking at my campaign that I'm building and the experience points, if you like, charts and systems that I've put in place before the campaign begins to really help me for that campaign. Now that may not make much sense now, but we're going to go into more detail about this later, and also in this program we're going to talk about it specifically. So let's get right down to business. A lot of systems actually have tables, charts and various things to help guide you as a DM to awarding experience points. Now in more modern systems they're referred to as challenge ratings and things like that. In older systems it was more about, you know, when you test a skill then you normally get a tick against that skill and things like that. They're all of them have their merits and their problems. But we're specifically really here talking about, you know, what to do, how to do it right, and I hope that this will help some of you. My thoughts are very simply that utilise very simply the books that you have in front of you, look at the system in detail and look for their prompts to help guide your initial decisions on the experience points awards that are fair. But there are quite a few things to consider, and these are more important. I mean, it's fairly easy to say X amount of creature is worth X amount of XP to so many people, but what about what everybody does in that combat? Is contribution important to you? You know, does someone who isn't really involved in it, do they get the same amount of experience points as the people that are involved in it? How are you handling it overall? Both sort of sides of the coin have their merits and their defaults. So let's try and explain that a little bit more. You could have a group of people and very simply just give out experience points as a flat line, so everybody gets the same, irrespective of their contribution, and that's fine. You know, that's very just. But the problem can be that that doesn't really promote maybe rewards for role playing. It doesn't really promote rewards for good ideas. So in my personal opinion, you know, as I said, life isn't fair, and if you want better players to come up to a higher mark, do you know what? Set the stall and expectations high. Encourage role playing by giving out XP. That can be just fun comments, things that made you laugh. Why not give out some experience points for that? That's equally as important as somebody's character who is able to influence someone else in a role-playing way. It's very important because you're promoting all the right things, and that's what experience points is really all about. So think of it in terms of a group award, and then also think on top of it individual awards, and tailor your decision-making processes to the overall system that you've got in front of you. So that's the way that I would begin to look at it if I was a new inexperienced DM. Now, as I say, a later campaign builder, we're going to look at this in more detail. So I'm going to share that then. But for now, all I would say as a recap is think about the system you're using. Generally, stick to the rules that it gives you, but think about some ad hoc experience points on top of that that are going to benefit your players and encourage the right sort of behaviours that you want around the table. So handling experience points is pretty important, but there is another small detail on top of this that's equally important, and we must never lose sight of this as DMs. We might want, you know, the game to be slow and the progression to be quite slow and long drawn out. We might want it to be quick, but the question is, what do your players want and what do your players expect? Because if you don't match their expectations, or at least set the expectations before the beginning of the campaign, you may have some issues quite quickly when people realise that they're not progressing. Now in the campaign I'm going to be running, as you'll see, you will notice that I've really been thinking very heavily about this and been mapping it out so that people will move up levels relatively quickly early on in the first few sessions, but then it really starts to slow down and there is a real bit of time between the levels, and that's deliberate because I want people to flavour those levels more, savour them, and then enjoy each level as they get them. So we'll come back to that at a later stage, but I hope that that's helped. That's handling experience points. My name's Sean Connors. Until the next time of DM's Tips, take care and happy gaming. Goodbye.